The story around Mat Armstrong and the Bugatti situation is one of those modern internet topics where car culture, business decisions, and social media influence all mix together. It is not a simple story with one clear answer. Instead, it sits between facts, opinions, and public perception. To understand it properly, you have to slow down and look at both sides without rushing to a conclusion. The center of this discussion is Mat Armstrong, a creator known for rebuilding damaged high-end cars and showing the full repair process in detail. His content is not just about cars looking good again. It is about exposing what is inside them, how they are built, and how much real-world repair actually costs. This kind of content has built him a large audience and strong influence in the automotive world. One of his most talked about projects involved the hypercar Bugatti Chiron. This car is known globally as one of the most expensive and advanced performance vehicles ever made. It represents extreme luxury, engineering precision, and a brand image built on perfection. Most people see it as untouchable, almost like a machine from another world. But when Mat Armstrong started showing parts of the rebuild process, something changed in how viewers saw the car. Instead of only seeing perfection, people saw real components, shared parts, and familiar engineering elements. Nothing illegal or fake, just normal automotive reality. Still, the emotional impact was strong because it broke the illusion many people had about hypercars. This is where the idea of perception shift begins. When something is considered perfect and expensive, people build a mental image around it. But when they see the inside details, that image can change. In Mat Armstrong's videos, viewers started noticing things like common fuse boxes, standard components, and repair methods that look surprisingly ordinary for such an expensive machine. It is important to understand something clearly here. Car manufacturers often share parts across different models and even brands. This is normal in the industry and helps reduce cost and improve reliability. But most buyers never see this process. It stays hidden behind design, branding, and marketing. That is why the reaction online felt so strong when it became visible. Some people began to argue that this kind of exposure changes how luxury brands are perceived. They believe that when exclusivity feels less mysterious, it can affect confidence in the brand image, not in the engineering quality, but in the emotional value people attach to it. In luxury markets, perception is extremely important. However, the other side of the argument is very different. Many analysts say that social media videos, even viral ones, cannot meaningfully influence major corporate decisions at the level of companies like Porsche or Bugatti. They argue that business decisions are driven by financial pressure, long-term strategy, and market performance, not online discussions. This brings us to the business side of the story involving Porsche. Around the same broader period, reports showed financial pressure and major changes inside the company. When large companies face profit drops or restructuring needs, they often reassess which assets are essential and which are not central to their core business. That in such situations, high-cost luxury divisions or minority stakes in exclusive brands can become part of strategic decisions. Not because they are failures, but because companies prioritize stability and long-term growth. If something does not directly support core revenue, it may be considered for sale or restructuring. This is where the connection becomes debated. Some people online started linking the timing of Mat Armstrong's viral content with broader industry changes. They suggested that public attention around hypercars and transparency might have added pressure to existing discussions about value and brand positioning. But this remains a theory, not a confirmed cause. The more grounded explanation is simpler. Large automotive companies regularly adjust their portfolios based on financial performance and future goals. These decisions are planned internally and usually take months or even years. They are rarely reactions to short-term online trends. Still, the interesting part of the story is not whether one YouTuber calls a corporate decision. The interesting part is how modern media changes perception. Today, a single video can reach millions of people and reshape how they think about products that were once hidden behind marketing stories. Even if it did not directly influence business decisions, Mat Armstrong's content clearly influenced public conversation. People started asking more questions about hypercars, manufacturing choices, and what luxury really means in modern automotive design. That kind of influence is cultural, not financial, and cultural influence should not be underestimated. In today's world, perception spreads faster than official statements. A video can shape opinions before companies even respond. That does not mean it controls business decisions, but it does affect how people think and talk about brands. When we bring both sides together, a clearer picture appears. The business world moves based on numbers, strategy, and long-term planning. At the same time, social media shapes how those decisions are viewed by the public. These two systems run in parallel, and sometimes they overlap in interesting ways that the most realistic conclusion is not extreme. It is not that a YouTuber changed $1 billion decision, and it is also not that online influence has zero effect. The truth sits in between. Financial decisions drive the business, while digital creators influence perception around IT in the end. This story is less about control and more about timing. Mat Armstrong's content arrived at a moment when people were already more curious about transparency in luxury engineering. That timing made the impact feel stronger than it might have been in another era, and that is why this topic became so widely discussed. It combines modern internet influence with traditional automotive industry decisions. It shows how today information, perception, and business all interact in ways that were not possible before social media existed. Continuing from where the discussion left off, it becomes even more important to look at how public perception evolves over time, especially when social media content repeatedly exposes things that were once hidden. In the past, luxury cars like the Bugatti Chiron were seen mainly through advertisements, press releases, and controlled media coverage. Everything was carefully presented to maintain a sense of perfection and exclusivity. Now, with creators like Mat Armstrong, that controlled image is no longer the only version people see. Instead, audiences get raw, unfiltered breakdowns of real machines, including damaged parts, repairs, and internal systems. This creates a more real-world view of cars that were once seen as untouchable symbols of engineering luxury. As this shift continues, audiences begin to develop a more informed but also more questioning mindset. People no longer just accept that expensive automatically means magical or mysterious. Instead, they start asking practical questions like what parts are shared, how repairs work, and why certain design choices exist. This does not reduce the quality of the product, but it changes the emotional storytelling around IT and the background. Companies like Porsche operate in a completely different world. Their decisions are driven by global markets, investor expectations, production costs, and long-term sustainability goals. These are not quick reactions to viral content, but structured plans shaped over long periods of financial analysis. When people online connect viral videos with corporate decisions, it usually comes from timing rather than direct influence. Humans naturally try to find patterns between events, especially when they happen close together. So if a video about hypercars becomes popular around the same time as a business announcement, it can feel connected even if there is no real link. Another important factor is how fast information spreads today. A single video can reach millions of viewers in a short time, and those viewers then create discussions, opinions, and theories. This creates a ripple effect where the original content becomes part of a much larger conversation that goes beyond its original purpose. But even with that influence, the structure of the automotive industry remains stable. Major decisions about brands, investments, or partnerships are based on internal performance metrics. These include profit margins, global demand, regulatory pressure, and long-term innovation strategies. Social media rarely enters that decision-making space directly. However, where social media does have real impact is in brand perception. If enough people start viewing a product differently, it can slowly influence how the brand is discussed in public. This does not instantly change company strategy, but over time it can affect marketing approaches and communication styles. In the case of hypercars, perception is extremely important because these vehicles are not just transportation. They are symbols. They represent engineering achievement, status, and exclusivity. Once that symbolic value is questioned or debated publicly, the brand must adapt its storytelling to maintain its image. This is why content like Mat Armstrong's feels powerful. It does not attack brands directly, but removes distance between the viewer and the product. When people see the inside of something expensive and realize it is built using familiar engineering principles, the mystique weakens slightly, even if the actual performance remains unchanged. Still, it is important not to overstate this effect. The automotive industry has survived decades of transparency improvements, technological exposure, and media evolution. Each time, Companies adapt by improving communication and reinforcing what makes their products special beyond just components. Ultimately, the real story is not about influence replacing business logic. It is about two systems existing side by side. One system is financial and strategic, controlled by companies like Porsche. The other is cultural and emotional, shaped by creators like Mat Armstrong and the audiences who engage with their content. When these two systems overlap, interesting discussions happen. Sometimes they align, sometimes they clash, and sometimes they simply run parallel without affecting each other directly. But together, they shape how modern audiences understand industries that were once hidden behind closed doors, and that is what makes this topic so compelling. It is not just about one car, one company, or one video. It is about how information changes perception in a world where everything is visible, shareable, and constantly analyzed in real time. As the discussion continues, it becomes clear that modern automotive storytelling is no longer controlled only by companies. Instead, it is shared between manufacturers, media outlets, and independent creators. This shift has changed how people understand engineering, value, and even luxury itself. What used to be a one-direction message from brands is now a two-way conversation with the public. Creators like Mat Armstrong play a role in this new system by showing processes that were previously invisible. When viewers see how a damaged hypercar is rebuilt step by step, it reduces the distance between ordinary engineering and elite engineering. This does not make the product worse, but it makes it feel more understandable and human. At the same time, companies such as Porsche continue operating on long-term business models that depend on stability, brand trust, and global demand. Their decisions are shaped by economic cycles, manufacturing costs, regulations, and investor expectations. These factors move slowly and are based on data, not online trends or viral content. This difference in speed is important. Online discussions move in hours or days, while corporate strategies move in months or years. Because of this gap, it is very unlikely that a single video or creator directly changes high-level business decisions. However, that same content can strongly influence how people interpret those decisions once they are announced. For example, when a major automotive decision happens, audiences often look for context online. If they already remember videos showing hidden parts of hypercars or discussing manufacturing details, they may connect those ideas to broader industry changes. This creates an impression of influence, even when the actual cause is unrelated. This is where perception becomes powerful. In industries like luxury cars, perception is part of the product itself. A vehicle like the Bugatti Chiron is not only valued for performance, but also for its image, rarity, and emotional impact. If public conversation around that image changes, even slightly, it can affect how people talk about the brand. But it is also important to stay grounded. Automotive companies do not make decisions based on viral narratives. They rely on structured planning, risk assessment, and financial forecasting. If a business decision aligns with online activity and timing, it is usually coincidence rather than cause. What social media does influence more strongly is curiosity. People today are far more interested in understanding how things work. Instead of accepting marketing messages at face value, they want to see proof, breakdowns, and real-world explanations. This shift has pushed transparency to become more valuable in almost every industry. In that sense, creators like Mat Armstrong are part of a larger movement rather than a single influencing force. They represent a new style of communication where engineering is shown openly, not hidden behind branding. This makes audiences more informed but also more skeptical, which changes the tone of public discussion. As a result, the automotive world now exists in two layers. The first layer is the official layer, where companies like Porsche operate through strategy, finance, and engineering goals. The second layer is a public layer, where creators like Mat Armstrong shape conversation, curiosity, and interpretation. These layers do not directly control each other, but they constantly interact. When something changes in one layer, the other reacts in discussion, analysis, or reinterpretation. This creates a cycle where information spreads faster than ever before, even if decision-making remains unchanged. In conclusion, the idea that a single YouTuber can influence a billion-dollar corporate decision is unlikely in a direct sense. However, it is accurate to say that creators can influence how those decisions are perceived by the public. And in today's world, perception is powerful enough to shape conversations, trends, and cultural understanding of entire industries. That is why this topic feels so significant. It is not just about cars or companies. It is about how modern information flows between creators, audiences, and industries, and how that flow shapes the way we interpret the world around us. To bring this discussion to a close, it helps to step back and look at the bigger picture rather than focusing only on individual events or theories. The story around Mat Armstrong and the wider automotive industry is not really about direct influence over corporations. It is about how modern audiences interpret information in a world where everything is visible, recorded, and shared instantly in traditional media. Companies like Porsche had much more control over the narrative surrounding their products. They decided what people saw when they saw it and how it was presented. Today, that control is more distributed. Independent creators, journalists, and everyday viewers all contribute to shaping public understanding. This does not mean that companies have lost control over their decisions. Their internal processes are still based on engineering requirements, financial planning, and long-term strategy. A hypercar like the Bugatti Chiron is developed through years of design, testing, and investment. Those decisions are far too complex to be influenced by short-term online trends. However, what has changed is the speed and scale of interpretation. When content goes viral, it can quickly shape how thousands or even millions of people think about a subject. That collective reaction can create new conversations that did not exist before, even if the original facts remain unchanged. This is where confusion often